Logan Paul is back to doing what he does best, taking advantage of his idiot fans for money. That's right, unlike most dishonest creators, I refuse to call Logan Paul a scam artist because at this point, if you give the guy money and lose it, that's your fault.
Logan Paul is about to auction one of the most famous Pokémon cards in the world, the Pikachu Illustrator. It's expected to sell for millions. But this isn't just a story about a rare collectible. It's about a card that was previously fractionalized, tokenized, and sold to the public through a platform that many users say failed to pay them out. And now, while that card is heading to auction, regulators are still investigating the company that helped sell pieces of it. So the question isn't how much the card is worth. The real question is, who actually owned it and who walked away with the money? Because this story isn't really about Pokémon. It's about hype, trust, and what happens when internet fame collides with financial products.
This is absolutely disgusting. Shame on PSA, shame on Logan, shame on Liquid Marketplace, shame on everyone that is not talking about this because this is important. We do not want fraud.
To understand why this situation matters, you first have to understand how Liquid Marketplace positioned itself. On paper, the concept sounded straightforward. Liquid Marketplace presented itself as a platform where users could buy tokens tied to real-world collectibles, physical assets stored in secure vaults. Instead of stocks or traditional crypto, the focus was on items people already understood: sports memorabilia, rare collectibles, and high-end trading cards. The appeal was accessibility. You didn't need millions of dollars to participate. You didn't need insider connections. You just needed to buy tokens. Those tokens were marketed as representing a fractional interest in real assets. The platform framed this as a way to open up an asset class that had previously been limited to wealthy collectors. And for a generation already comfortable with crypto and online investing, the pitch worked. Liquid wasn't framed as gambling. It wasn't framed as speculation. It was framed as a smarter, modern way to participate in collectibles as investments. But credibility mattered, and that's where Logan Paul entered the picture. Logan wasn't just a passive name attached to the platform. He was one of its most visible figures. And the flagship asset tied to Liquid Marketplace was his Pikachu Illustrator card, one of the rarest Pokémon cards in existence. The card wasn't presented as something only Logan controlled. It was positioned as something the community could participate in. That framing, participation rather than observation, is what made the platform compelling, but it also meant that trust became the foundation of everything that followed. For users who bought tokens tied to the Pikachu Illustrator card, expectations were relatively simple. They believed they were participating in an asset tied to a physical collectible. They believed that if the card increased in value, their tokens would reflect that. And most importantly, they believed that if the card was ever sold or bought out, token holders would receive payouts proportional to their holdings. The platform's language reinforced that assumption. Terms like fractional interest, community participation, and shared upside were used to describe how the system worked. What most users didn't focus on or didn't fully understand were the technical and legal distinctions behind those terms. Did token holders legally own part of the card, or were the token's financial instruments tied to a promise? That distinction wasn't top of mind for most buyers at the time. What mattered was trust. Trust in the platform, trust in the process, and trust in the people associated with it. Logan's involvement strengthened that trust. He had publicly talked about his attachment to the card and his history as a collector. For many users, that made the setup feel personal rather than purely transactional. But that emotional connection also raised expectations, because once real money was involved, expectations eventually had to be met. And those expectations were tested when Logan later said he had repurchased the card. In May 2024, Logan Paul publicly stated that he had repurchased the Pikachu Illustrator card from Liquid Marketplace. According to Logan, the buyout was meant to resolve the situation cleanly. He said he paid the platform to regain full control of the card, and that the funds from that transaction were intended to be distributed to token holders. From his perspective, the obligation ended there. Logan later said he believed token holders had been paid and that the matter was settled, but that's where the narrative began to fracture. because not long after that statement, users began saying they never received payouts. Some reported being unable to withdraw funds. Others said the platform stopped functioning properly. Support channels, according to multiple users, went quiet. Then, in late 2025 reporting, a new detail emerged. Logan told CLLCT that the amount he paid to buy back Liquid Marketplace's interest in the card was $250,000. That number raised immediate questions. Not because it was insignificant, but because it didn't appear to align with what many users believed the tokenized portion of the card represented. Online discussions focused on the gap between earlier marketing narratives and the reported buyout figure. There was no public accounting to resolve those questions. No clear breakdown of who was paid, when, or how much. And without transparency, speculation filled the void. As time passed, frustration grew among token holders. Users across social media reported similar experiences. They could log into accounts but couldn't withdraw funds. Trading features were disabled or inactive. Support tickets went unanswered. What made the situation worse was the lack of communication. There was no public explanation for delays, no status updates, no timeline for resolution. And as Liquid Marketplace stopped engaging publicly, uncertainty turned into distrust. From the user perspective, responsibility didn't matter. Whether the issue was technical failure, mismanagement, or something else entirely, the outcome was the same. They didn't have access to their money. At the same time, Logan Paul was no longer directly involved in day-to-day communication. He had already stated that he believed payouts were handled. From his standpoint, responsibility rested with the platform. But for users, that distinction didn't change their situation. And that unresolved gap pushed the controversy beyond online debate. Eventually, the issue moved beyond social media. The Ontario Securities Commission filed enforcement proceedings against Liquid Marketplace and several of its executives. The allegations were serious. Regulators claimed the platform misrepresented crypto assets, failed to comply with securities law, and mishandled investor funds. The case does not name Logan Paul as a respondent, but the investigation reframed the entire situation. This was no longer just a dispute between users and a platform. It became a legal examination of whether Liquid Marketplace was structurally flawed from the start. The Capital Markets Tribunal has scheduled additional merits hearings for June 18th and 19th, 2026. Until those proceedings conclude, many questions remain unanswered. In early 2026, Logan Paul announced he would auction the Pikachu Illustrator card. That announcement reignited the controversy, not because auctions are unusual, but because this one felt like finality. Once the card is sold, ownership is settled. For critics, the auction felt premature. For supporters, it felt like closure. And for former token holders, it felt like the door was closing without clear answers. The auction pulled the story back into public view and shifted the focus away from speculation and toward outcomes. Because while platforms can disappear, assets keep moving. Here's what's clear. Liquid Marketplace promoted tokenized access to collectibles. Logan Paul later said he repurchased the Pikachu Illustrator card and believed token holders were paid. Regulators allege serious misconduct by the platform, and Logan Paul is not named in the enforcement action. What remains unclear is what happened between those points. Some users say they were never paid. There is no public accounting to resolve that dispute, and the legal process is still ongoing. This story isn't about proving guilt. It's about accountability in a space where influence, money, and trust overlap. And as long as questions remain unanswered, the controversy doesn't disappear. It just waits. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, I appreciate your time. This story is still unfolding, and we'll keep following it as more information comes out. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.
I know you're not following what I'm saying anyway, right? That's okay. That doesn't matter. The real question is this. Is all this legal? Absolutely fucking not.